Hello everybody, my guest today is Andrew Vrbas. Andrew is the CEO and co-founder of Pacha Soap Company out of Hastings, Nebraska. Andrew founded Pacha Soap with his wife Abby when he was 23 years old. He's grown the business to over 70 employees. They do business all over the world, sourcing products from various countries. We talk about a lot of things in this conversation. We talk a lot about Andrew's family life and how he balances having a business that he founded with his wife, who's no longer super involved but still has a say in what goes on. We talked about how they raised their 3 boys. We've talked about what it will look like when he wants to get off the ride, or if he ever will. We talk about what makes him optimistic, how he approaches work-life balance, the biggest challenges he's faced as the CEO of the company. We cover a lot of ground, as we always do. So with that said, I hope you'll enjoy this conversation with my good friend, Andrew Vrbas. Yeah, so you were here last fall. Thanks for doing this, man. This is a fun one to record because we've never done one this late before.
Yeah.
So actually, the first thing I wanted to do was thank Paul, the producer here, for agreeing to be here so late.
Thanks,
Paul. Thank you. You're the man. So, thanks for doing this on kind of short notice.
Yeah, man.
I wrote down several things that I would want to talk to you about, but the thing I wanted to start with is just the nature of our friendship.
Yeah.
Because this is a unique friendship.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, first of all, the guy that introduced us has never made an introduction for me before or since. He's made one intro, but it just so happened that the intro he made turned into a pretty good friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
Do you have any other friendships that you've made in adulthood?
Like ours? No.
Yeah.
I've had some friendships made in adulthood, but not like ours. And it's kind of funny when I tell people about my friend Tanner in Austin, because we've talked, not every week, but pretty consistently every week for over 4 years now.
Yeah.
From one phone conversation.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, how about the next one? And then it just kept going. And I've talked to you more consistently than any other person other than my wife.
Agreed. Yeah, same.
It's wild.
It probably never would have happened had it not been for COVID.
Yeah, that's
for the
true.
period that we were in.
That's true. Because it was 2020, right? It was
2020. And it was early COVID era.
March 20.
Yeah. I remember when Josh, who introduced us, I remember when he told me, hey, I've got a buddy that I want you to meet. I thought, man, that's it's weird for him to make an intro.
Yeah.
So yeah, let me talk to this guy.
Why do you think he did it?
I don't know. I think he recognized that there were things about you that he also saw in me, and was just like, these guys need to know each other.
That's funny.
But I'm pretty sure within 10 or 15 minutes of talking to you, we hit it off, and I was like, let's talk again next week. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Is El Jefe Habanero a name that you make people call you at Pacha? Or is that,
oh my gosh,
do you just make them call you sir?
El Jefe Habanero. That's a deep track, man.
Yeah.
That's old school.
I did my research.
That was like on my first business card.
Where did that come from? Is there a story behind it?
No, man, I just made it up. Like, it's funny now because my official title is CEO, right? And that's my title. And, but when I first started as like a early 20s kid with long hair and a backwards hat, I'm like, screw those conventional titles.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to poke fun at it and say, I don't know, head soap maker, like boss soap man, basically. And, I don't know.
How long did it take you to adopt the CEO title?
I think it just took me, it's funny. Okay. So it's an interesting question, because I feel like you get to a certain stage when you're young and you want to almost buck every convention, every norm. It almost feels like you're falling in line and you're like not disrupting, not changing, not making progress in some form or fashion. If you look conventional, if you think conventional, it's interesting to watch that progression. And then you get to the point where not everything is as it seems. In fact, by being very different, quote unquote, you could actually be more conventional. You actually could be, I don't know. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. Because I did the same thing.
Did you?
And I did it prior to starting Live Oak
Okay.
as just a salesperson. I didn't want to be called a salesperson.
What did you call yourself?
It started with account executive, which was the title that they had given other salespeople. And then I recognized, man, it would help me in some of these deals if I had a director title.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't directing anything. He was a sales guy. But I remember going into our CEO's office and be like, hey, can I change my title? And he was like, I don't care. You can call yourself whatever you want to. If it helps you get deals closed, go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
So I think I made up like director of business development.
Okay.
And put it on a business card.
Yeah.
And
Did it help?
Probably not. Yeah, no,
Helped
probably
your
not.
confidence, maybe.
It helped my confidence. I got to name myself, so that was cool. But yeah, the sort of eye roll that calling yourself CEO creates, I have it too.
Yeah.
Introducing myself to somebody as a CEO of a business, I am reluctant to do it.
Right. Yeah.
When you're talking to somebody that doesn't know you, they don't know what you do for a living.
Right.
How do you explain it to them?
I make soap.
That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make soap.
Yeah.
That's all I go. I mean, even in my hometown, I make soap.
Does it ever go beyond that? Do people get interested, or is it just like, oh, you're just
yeah.
soap
No, I mean,
guy?
like, I'll tell them, I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Talking about like, well, tell me about the soap. Tell me what would you do? You know, I'll just talk to them, and sometimes they'll find out, oh, like you started this with your wife, and like they'll ask enough questions that are leading, but I don't like, there's such, I don't know if it started with, maybe you could answer this. Did it start with shows like Shark Tank of why entrepreneurship got to be such a trending thing in our country? Because it's almost like worshipped. Like entrepreneurs are almost seen in sort of like raised to an elevation, and I don't like it. I think it's pretty unhealthy, but I don't know where that comes from. So
It's probably has something to do with the American ethos of like striking out on your own and being independent and being a maverick and starting your own path.
Right.
It does get over romanticized.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. Having good mentors is what kind of helped me through the first, now it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
But every one of my mentors, even the things that we share in common, you recognize at some point, like, I just kind of have to blaze my own path here. Because your experiences are different, your business is different, the people challenges are different. You get similarities, but you just have to draw from other people's experience and work off intuition as much as you can.
Right.
When did you start Pacha Soap?
Well, Abby and I started it in 2013 officially.
Were you together at the time?
Yeah, we were,
dating or married?
Dating.
Okay.
Wait, now let me think. Dating and engaged, and then married the same year.
Okay.
Well, we were dating before, but engaged in 2013 and then married. But we started officially in 2013, although I had the idea when I was in Peru. I came back to the U.S. in 2010. And so then I had 2 more years left of school, 2011, 2012. So in those 2 years, I was making soap in my apartment and like just researching what business, and I actually met Abby. I asked her to be a model because I thought she was beautiful. I knew her before, but I'm like, hey, would you model? I was like selling soap on Etsy, and I'm like, would you model for my soaps on Etsy?
It's a good move.
Yeah. I mean, I actually but she was like, no, I don't think she agreed.
She wouldn't do it?
I don't think so. I think she thought it was creepy.
That's great. I haven't met her officially, but I like her more every time you tell stories like that.
She's great. But
it's great.
No, it's been that long.
We spent all the way here from the airport talking about negative topics, about how the world is burning and things are going downhill.
Yeah.
What makes you optimistic?
Oh man, I'm optimistic about a lot of things. I think, we hear that the world's burning, or that, the world's rainforests are gone. People are poorer than they've ever been. I mean, if you were to ask the average person, I think that the outlook on the world would be that it's the worst it's ever been, the worst state it's ever been. But I don't travel everywhere, but I do travel enough places in this country and then in other countries to see that there is a lot to be hopeful for. I'm optimistic ultimately about like what people are able to do when they come together. Because the power of people cooperating and doing something, building something, is really strong. And I think like the capitalist system is a really efficient way of people exchanging resources or pooling their efforts, their talents, working together to accomplish something.
Mm-hmm.
What gives me hope is that people are ultimately not driven by purely extracting value. Like at the core essence, people are not driven by money. At the core essence, they're driven by other things. Sometimes people get lost along the way and they just think about it, just extracting as much value from anything that they can get, but that's ultimately not necessarily the same as building,
Yeah.
And so I guess what keeps me optimistic is that it's hardwired in us to build and to collaborate and cooperate, and that's what gives us life.
Feels like we're a little bit hardwired. I won't even say a little bit. We're very much hardwired to recognize threat or to constantly be scanning for threat.
Right.
And when we're told for years and years and years on end that everything is a threat and the other side is a threat, and you got to vote this way or the country's going to end, at some point your subconscious starts to believe it.
Yeah.
And if you're not paying attention and you don't have a hold of your mental reins, it's easy to slip into that negativity.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But I like to ask that question about what makes you optimistic, because it really, like, I know for me, I'm a pretty optimistic guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to be upbeat.
Yeah.
But I, like everybody else, get stuck in these rabbit holes of like negativity and reading news headlines that are fed to me that are obviously negative to get me to click on them.
Yeah.
And I have to pull myself out of it by thinking about, okay, what evidence do I see in the world that things are going to work?
Yeah.
That things are going to be okay? Yeah. And I still feel like I can chart a course to that, even at times when it feels really dark.
Yeah.
So I've made a habit of asking that question as much as possible, just so I can hear how other people look at the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, like, ultimately, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all requires some element of faith. So it's the same thing as asking, like, what do you have faith in?
Right.
Where does your faith come from?
Right.
And people would say, like, oh, I'm not a person of faith. And it's like, well, I think to get up in the morning and to walk outside, you have to have some level of faith.
Yeah.
It just depends on where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And
what is it in?
Yeah.
What is the biblical definition of faith? Is that faith is the belief in things hoped for but not seen?
Oh, I like that.
Something like that?
I like that. I was looking up the word, it's probably different, but the word hope itself, I was looking up the definition of that, and the Greek origins of the word hope it means confident expectation. And I thought that was different than when I think about hope.
That's cool.
I think about, like, oh, it's wishy-washy. Like, I hope for this, but I don't really know. But the Greek elpis word means confident expectation. And so you have to have confidence in the well, how do you have confidence in what's going to happen? It has to be something that you're seeing or something that you're experiencing or something that you have seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how you have confidence in something typically. It's not just purely hearsay. And so I think it's being tuned in and like having hope based off of paying attention and seeing things.
Do you believe in people's ability to manifest things into reality through that path of hoping, confident expectation of, like, I know how this is going to play out?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And I think that that's both good and bad. Like, I think that you can manifest your reality. You could say, hey, I really want this to happen. I really want this to happen. And, you might end up getting it, but, be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Maybe that thing that you really, 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 really wanted, you get, and then you realize, oh boy, I'm still incomplete. Even though I thought this was the thing that I was going to have. But then it can also be a good thing where I was like, diligently hoping and wanting this thing, and it happened, and it just really allowed me to, I don't know, keep going another day.
Yeah.
Because something happened. So I think it's good and bad. I don't know. That's interesting.
I've had experiences like that too. And it is a mixed bag. You're right. There are times where I have set out a goal for myself. I have spent years pursuing that goal. You attain it, and then you recognize, like, man, that's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as fulfilling as you thought.
Right.
And then you end up in this funk of, like, I spent all these years building to this thing, and it didn't fulfill me like I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
But then there's things where you see a goal and you pursue it, and you sort of connect the dots working backwards into how I can accomplish this thing.
Yeah, it's about the journey.
And the pathway ends up being the thing that's fulfilling.
That's exactly right. And I was thinking about this as like a relationship. So it's almost like this relationship. For me, it's with God to say, okay, I am asking for this thing and I'm paying attention to the signs. If I get it, great. If I don't, that's okay. But I'm watching, I'm holding my expectations like this because they could shift and change, but I also then am asking for something.
Yeah.
And watching that relationship and paying attention to it is good versus I'm not even going to ask for it. And I've gone through those seasons too, where like it's just too small of a thing, or
right.
I'm just not even going to ask. But then, how do you're not in relationship or in connection, I think.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me.
Yeah. When you're praying, so let me back up.
Yeah.
You're a man of faith.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot when we have our weekly calls.
Yep.
And at different seasons of life, you have different levels of confidence that you're believing in something real.
Yes.
I think that family probably amplifies the need for faith a little bit because now you're responsible for more people than just you.
Yeah.
But talk about how faith can be intertwined in business, or whether or not it should be.
Yeah, that's interesting. For one, not everybody has to, in business, who I work with, has to share the faith that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's, one of the things I like about business is the meritocracy. So it's pretty clear cut. Like it's pretty clean. It's, are we working towards a goal? And, if we're doing that together and people are carrying their weight, and I like the term regenerative, they're putting in more than they're taking out. So if people have that regenerative mindset of putting in more than they're taking out, then it tends to work. But yeah, how has it worked for me? Having faith in business means that when something really, really bad has happened to me in business in the past, that has broken me, it helps me find sort of bedrock, which is there is something deeper and bigger that your security is based on. And if you don't have that, then whether things are going great in business or bad in business, that's sort of like how you're doing, right? You're just like on this pendulum of, oh, things are great, so I'm doing great, or things are horrible, so I'm doing horrible. And for me, like having faith, not that I've done this perfectly, it's a daily struggle, frankly, but when I've done it well, having a bedrock of consistency that my identity is not rooted in what I do, but yet still being very important to me. And it's a funny balance, but I don't know, without faith, I don't know what it would look like, frankly.
Is there a place for the advertisement of a CEO's faith as part of the business? Does that question make sense?
I think so. I mean, I think so. I mean, this day and age, I'm a pretty private person. And so
glad I asked you on camera.
Right. I keep most of my stuff to myself, but if asked, I mean, I share with anybody.
Yeah.
And it's never been gone wrong for me.
But your company is not, there's no public statements of the Christian owned business anywhere in your materials.
No.
Yeah.
No, because, like other people may have different viewpoints and that's fine. And, and so our company and our values are based on biblical truths for sure, just because that's like belief systems that I hold and that I've developed. But yeah, it's not a part of what we do because there might be people that buy our products that don't have those beliefs. So that's fine.
Yeah.
We still want them to enjoy the products and make it. So I don't know. I've wrestled with that. I think sometimes too, like, sometimes it just gets a little bit strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been critiqued by like the Christian community in this, but I don't lead, I do know some Christian nonprofits or businesses and they want to associate with other Christian businesses and nonprofits. It's just sort of, but I think, well, I just love people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter to me. It's what someone's faith is. And I just sort of bring it in, but it's more of a personal thing for me.
Yeah. Instinctively, it seems to me like the people that you're around who want to tell you how good of a guy they are,
Yeah.
or how much they care for their family, or like somebody that leads with that. I don't know. There's something in my head that goes,
Always.
I don't know that you're telling me the truth.
Yeah, always.
And so when I see it in business, I had a friend of mine. He's become a friend, but he's the head of a big private school here in Austin. I had him in here.
Okay.
And we talked about this, how whether or not your face should be something you publicly advertise as part of your business.
Yeah.
And man, I don't think so. Yeah. At least the way that I conceptualize it, it seems to me like you can do more harm than good by conducting business that way.
Yeah.
And you cause a lot of people who might agree with you on core principles to, it seems more like a virtue signal to me than it does a position statement for a business.
Yeah.
And that you can actually do more good and spread the gospel more by how you conduct yourself than what you say about yourself or the way that your business functions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And like for me, I've never shied away from it when I'm working with people individually, or if it ever comes up, like I don't mind sharing, but it's always in private.
Yeah.
Except for this talk right now.
Yeah, except for this one. It's literally going out to tens of people. There might be 15 people that see this conversation, so watch it. You talked about hard times in business. Some of these we've talked about before.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go into details or share company names or anything, but can you share some, either the biggest challenge that you faced as a CEO or the hardest lesson you've had to learn, lessons you had to learn the hard way?
Oh, so many. So many. There's obvious ones and then less obvious ones. The one that's really obvious that really hit is we had an opportunity with a large retailer, and they placed a huge purchase order, and we were like, great. We had the supply chain set up, and it was something we felt really, really good about doing. Worked really hard for, and we were rolling, and then they canceled. Like we delivered maybe a third of it, and they canceled the other 2/3 of it. And that one purchase order was larger than our previous year's revenue. So like that's how large this was, and so that retailer stuck us with a lot of inventory, and it just nearly took us down. And what hurt about it so much is this was something that we were doing that I felt was very good. Like it felt like a good thing to do. It felt like we were providing a product that was needed at the time. And anyways, that was really hard. That caused me to go deeper, in my faith, and caused me to go deeper, caused our teams to go deeper. We had to pull together. So there's always a silver lining, but that was the single biggest thing that happened in business. I'd say the things that I've learned more and more is how to pick the right people and put the right people in the right seats. That's got to be the hardest challenge in business is identifying talent, identifying what they're good at, putting them in the right spot, setting those expectations, and then working with them to help them achieve it. Because especially as you're growing, you don't know always what type of person you need to get that level of growth. Because if you started here, you're here, you don't know necessarily what that looks like. So to predict the type of person that can help to take you there is really hard when you just started at nothing.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I've gotten, I'd say, better at over the years, but is the biggest learning that I watch entrepreneurs struggle with that all the time.
Are there common threads in the people that you put in positions like that are successful? Like, what are the things that you have come to recognize as a hallmark of somebody that, like, okay, this person's got it?
That's a great question. Ego's got to be the one. And ego's used a word. That word's used a lot, right? Like people with low ego.
Yeah. How do you suss that out?
It's tough because sometimes the people that look the most modest or the most humble on the outside are actually the most prideful. It's really hard to spot because I've heard it said once that, like, what is it? Modestness, I guess you could say, is not thinking of yourself less. It's thinking less. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And so, that's tough to spot. But a true humility where it's not about me. I want to, and this comes back to the regenerative principle we talked about. Put in more than you're taking out. Put in more than you're taking. And I think people who are willing to put in more than they take out, it's clearly not about them. So that is a big one. Then there's just the straight up competency. Is somebody have the competency, the fluency with, depends on the position, but do they have the skill set needed?
Yeah.
I heard this said one time, attitude, skills, knowledge, ask. Attitude, you cannot, it's really hard to change somebody's attitude. Like if they have a great attitude, that's a really good start. Skills, you can teach skills. Like those are still kind of hard. You got to develop them over time. Knowledge is almost the easiest thing. Yeah, you can teach. Knowledge can be acquired really quickly. Skills take time. Attitude, oof.
Can't teach that one.
That's a tough one to teach.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a willingness.
Right.
Back to humility. If you're full of something already, oh, I'm this. Well, great, I guess, if that's real, if it's true. And so then you find people who are confident. Okay, confidence is different than arrogance. And to spot the difference, it's boy, that's an art.
It usually doesn't show up in big ways.
No,
it's these little whispers.
That's right.
You're like, man, I don't know if I heard that right, but that didn't sound like what I thought this person was about.
Yeah.
And then you start paying attention to it, and then sometimes you'll recognize, like, oh, okay, I see who you are.
Yeah, that's right. And then like motivations, like what's the motivation? Because everybody, and this before the age of 6, most people have a lot of things formed, a lot. And so you can dig into people's internal motivations and know sort of what drives somebody. Like there's so many things that drive each of us, and so understanding people's motivations is really good. And then incentive alignment, like what is the incentive here? Is this, am I aligned? Are they aligned with each other? But back to humility, why I picked that one first is if there is true humility, I think that's a really good foundation.
Yeah.
Humility mixed with confidence and like self-actualization, that's probably a better way of thinking. Like, I don't need a title to make me me. I don't need a job to make me me. I'm me. I am humble enough to know that there's things I need to learn and things I can get better at. There's a lot you can do with that. Mixed with intelligence, that's something really, really good.
How often do you get it wrong?
More than I've gotten it right.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and it I don't know if this is your experience, but it seems like every time I realize, I got this one wrong. This person's not what I thought they were. It's harder and harder on me.
Yeah.
Because you feel like, man, I've been doing this for 10 years now.
It's a reflection on you, right? It's like, gosh,
it's 100% a reflection. Like, it feels worse for me than it does thinking about that person not being right for the job.
Yeah, I know.
Like, they're not right for the job. That's fine. But why didn't I see it a year and a half ago? I could have saved us both a lot of time.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've made the mistake of like, I can coach somebody up.
Yeah.
I can coach, but that's more of that's an ego thing too. Like,
totally.
I can get somebody there. You
right.
know? And I've had to admit to myself over the last 2 years really that, no, I don't think that I can really. Like, there's a certain level where I don't think I can get somebody to a certain level.
Most of the time I've found too that when a person ultimately doesn't make it, when they fail, you think back about your original conversations with that person, and it's the thing that you overlooked, that you knew at the time, like, that could be a problem. But to your point, like, I mean, that could be a problem, but I can probably coach that out of that person.
Right. I know.
And then 18 months later, you're like, we got to cut bait. And it's the thing that you forced yourself to overlook that ended up being the tipping point.
And the thing about humility that I like is if somebody is coachable or teachable or just open enough, because we all have gaps.
Yeah.
Geez, I do too. And so a good person will see your gaps too and help you through it. And so if somebody's open and really willing to just back to the self-actualize, like if you're not attached to your identity so much that you can't shift, then you're open to changing. You're open to feedback because it's not about you. It's about the ultimately accomplishing the job that's in front of you or the mission of the organization. So that's why humility, as I've seen people that have succeeded, because we've grown and flexed a lot. People have been in different roles. It's what happens in growing organizations, especially under someone like myself that's hasn't been a professional manager. Right? So I'm trying to figure that out throughout the past 11 years or so. As I've seen people that have succeeded through that, it's a detachment from this is about me. And that allows you to see more clearly of what do I need to change in myself? how can I grow? It's like that growth mindset. And I really love that phrase, growth mindset. Fixed mindset is, well, I'm here and it's always going to be like this. Growth mindset is, okay, I'm nimble. I can learn. I have the capacity to learn. I can grow. I don't have to be stuck in my old habits, my old ways. Because truly anybody can learn anything. The thing that prevents it is just ourselves.
Yeah.
We tell ourselves, well, I'm not that, or I can't do that, or I will, that won't make sense to me.
Yeah. And that humility thing sort of requires that you assume that you always have blind spots and that you always have weaknesses.
Yeah.
And that you're constantly searching out for what those things are so that you can remedy them and get better over time. Is it harder for you to find a good worker or a good leader?
Oh, that's a good question. Leaders are hard. True people leaders.
Yeah.
They're hard to find. Because it's a funny balance. I have one now, and looked for this person for a long time, and what makes this person so strong is the ability to be very caring and kind, truly loving as a person, and also firm in this is where we're going, and this is what it's going to look like, and then so those two things, and then to get people excited about it, like, whoa, that's cool.
Did you know you were getting that in that person prior to making that hire?
Yeah.
Or was it like you hired based on the things that you knew and then you got surprised by the things you didn't know?
No, I kind of sussed it out. And this one, so back to the hiring and like, okay, how do you do that well? We looked for this person for March, April, May, June, 4 months maybe. Went through maybe 12 candidates and went through 3 or 4 rounds of people sussing things out. And it including people on our board and people on our team and my wife and all these different layers, and so you get a real. It's hard to miss things in that thorough of a process. Now you can't do that for every position. Yeah, but the real important ones you can't afford not to.
And this is somebody you hired into a leadership position. Yes, we have not done that yet.
Really?
I will say we haven't done it successfully yet. We have hired people into either manager positions or whatever leadership position. The leaders that we have that have made it, that are at a point where they're a fixture at the business as long as they want to be here, none of them were hired for the job that they're currently working. None of them, including me. Like I didn't start as CEO either. Right. So we have some shared ground there, but I can see into the future of our business enough to realize like we're going to have to, at some point, we're probably going to have to hire people into leadership positions.
Boy, it's tough.
That's a different kind of hire, man.
It's so hard. It's so hard because, okay, here's the thing. Leaders are never fully placed. Leaders are always chosen by the people they lead.
Right.
Always.
Right.
You can give somebody a leader, give them a title, make them a leader. I have the ability to make people leaders, but I actually don't have the ability to make people leaders.
Yeah.
Because they I'd say I'm very transparent about that. People have to choose their leaders. Yeah. So it's up to the leader to actually be tested, to be, and people test leaders all the time. That's what humans do. We poke, we prod. Are you actually what you say you are? You have this title. Are you? That's what people do.
Yeah.
And so, then, okay, so people in our position who choose leaders, whoa, we can't afford to get that wrong. And it hurts when you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liken it to, it's much easier to transplant young trees. You can move young trees around. Tree this big.
Yeah.
Okay, you can move that tree. It's going to be all right.
There's no taproot there you're dealing with.
This tree, okay, maybe. But the bigger tree you get, it's tough. And it's not a perfect analogy, but it is tough to place senior leaders. But yeah, you get to a certain point when the attitude might be great. The skills and knowledge piece, it maybe just isn't enough. The competency piece is maybe not enough.
Yeah.
It depends on your growth. It depends on what you want to go conquer.
Because you can put somebody in a leadership position, but it doesn't mean people are going to follow them.
It doesn't.
Yeah. And you really don't ever know that until you get them into the position.
No.
We've made leadership hires before that I would have thought, man, based on this guy's resume, he's going to get in and crush.
Right.
And he doesn't even make it 60 days. And you realize like, oh no, this is a really bad hire.
Oh, and that's the wildest thing too that I learned through this last process is because, what things are on paper, it does not always equate. And there's so many other factors.
Yeah.
So many other factors.
Yeah.
What stage of life are they in? Like what's their energy like right now? What are they coming out of?
Right.
What are they running from? What are they going to?
Right.
There's so many things to consider. And then just there's the gut piece that, this recruiter that we worked with, she's a little bit of a mystic. And she wouldn't describe herself that way, but she was like, she put a lot of merit into the founder's gut.
Mm.
And it gave me confidence actually, because I have a gut instinct on it, but oftentimes because someone will override it to say, well, on paper, like this 2 + 2 is 4 here. But there's a gut aspect. There's like this mystical piece of like, oh, this feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the things that make a leader successful are almost never the thing that shows up on paper.
Right.
Really, really ever.
Right.
It's all about seeing how they interact with their teams and how they handle pressure and how they handle failure and
right.
How much you can challenge them and push them to do things that they're not super comfortable doing and, being growth minded.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So talk about some other characteristics of good leadership. The period that we are in, we're sitting here in, what are we in August of 2024, election year. It seems to me like whatever hope we have for pulling out of whatever funk we're in has to start with good leadership.
Yeah.
So what is the best thing we can hope for? What would be the characteristics of the leader who might be able to walk us through whatever wilderness we're in?
Oh.
Humility was the first one you mentioned.
I think humility is key. I think that's really key. Good leaders need to understand that they're servants, ultimately. Good leaders serve their people.
Yeah.
And if that's where the humility comes in, because if it's about you, you're not really leading anyone.
Right.
So I think about that a lot. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard it said, so it seems kind of interesting, but when wolves are walking, apparently the alpha wolf is in the back. They're not always in the front. And then even hiking, like you're taught to say, like you're strongest, you need to put in the back, not in the front. Because you can only go at the speed of your slowest.
Right.
And so that's where that, sense of being humble, being close to your people to understand really what's going on, not just for some, but for all.
Right.
And sort of reading the tea leaves, as it were. It doesn't mean that you have to, so I don't know, that's just a general sense. And then leadership sometimes is knowing when to push too. Like, hey, maybe this is unhealthy. We can't stop here. This is dangerous, or this isn't a good spot. So we got to keep going. See, I think it's the wisdom to know. Wisdom is a good one. Like humility and wisdom. Wisdom is knowing when to do things, when not to do things.
Yeah. When to be quiet.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it requires you to just be quiet and let the team figure it out.
Right.
And be there as a sounding board when they need it.
Right.
Yeah. That's the best leaders I know have a remarkable intuition for when to push and when to pull back and when to speak and when to not speak.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's something that's taught.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's learned after messing up a bunch and doing it wrong.
Oh, that sounds right.
You started Pacha with your wife.
Yeah.
How involved is she in the business today?
Well,
Abby.
Not directly, but indirectly a lot. Of course, she's my sounding board and helps me process and think through things and coaches me and gives me a lot of wisdom. So, indirectly every day.
Yeah. She's had times in the company's history where she's been super involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm assuming that if you're still doing this 20 years from now and your kids are grown up, will she re-engage in the business?
I don't think so. No, I think, and it was really the circumstances for her not being in the business were just pretty terrible on my part. So like we started the business together, young kids, got married.
How old were you?
Oh geez, how old was I? Like 22, she was 21, and got married, young, and me being just an idiot. Like I didn't know how to be a good husband, and a good boss, and then you have the personal stuff mixed with the business stuff, and it was hard. It was hard on both of us. And then my dad got sick, and I knew it was a sickness that I just knew was going to be terminal.
Mm.
And I knew it. And I think that pressure was on me. The work-life balance with Abby was on me. The pressure of growing a business was on me. So all this stuff was on me. And I just told her one night, and she says that I looked like I was about to die. I just said, hey, it's either you or me that's going to run this thing. But one of us has to step out. Like, we need a life outside of this. We need some grounding. And looking back, I was just drowning. I was looking for any way to have some form of normalcy. And it felt right, and we wanted to start a family, but that was really hard for her. That was really hard on her.
Mm.
Because she loved it. She loved what she did. And I look back on that, and the way I handled it, it was selfish, really. And I don't know, I would have done it differently, I guess, going back.
How? What would you have done differently?
I would have taken a breath, taken a break, just calm down.
Yeah.
Right. My favorite line from The Big Lebowski: "Nothing's fucked." Just calm down.
Yeah.
But I would have done that, and but yeah, it is what it is. But that was tough.
Yeah. Being a family-oriented person who starts a business when they're young and has a spouse who's involved in the business, we have a shared path there.
Yeah.
Finding the separation between work and home life, the work-life balance thing, is a virtual impossibility if you're really taking both seriously.
Right.
Like, you're doing one at the expense of the other.
Yeah.
So there are times when you recognize in real time, like, oh, I'm not doing well here.
Yeah.
I've failed here.
Yeah.
I've spent too much time working and not enough time at home, or vice versa. But then there's times when you're in the pocket, like you do the things that you need to be doing at work to feel like you're excelling, and then you come home and you can put it to bed and like engage with your family in a meaningful way. Talk about the hallmarks of that sort of period for you. Like, when it's working, when you're in rhythm, when you know you're doing an exceptional job as CEO and as dad and husband, what does that look like?
Oof. I don't know if I ever have those moments where I feel like I'm crushing it all.
You never have those moments.
I don't think so. And that's part of my personality, is like, maybe I just don't allow myself to feel those things. Just 'cause I think I'm just like constant improvement. But there's moments where it's going better than others, for sure. But I think in those moments, what's different is that maybe I just have perspective, trying to see longer term than just in the pure immediacy. What's helped me, I guess, with having Abby now not full-time in the business is, you ever have that person, it's like Yoda. You go to Yoda. Yoda's not fighting the battle with you, right? Like, you go to Yoda because Yoda's disconnected a little bit. And Yoda will guide you through it. Not that it's an exact analogy, but I'm able to go to Abby, and she's not in it every day. So she has maybe a better perspective, maybe a longer term perspective, maybe a more accurate one, because she's not as in it. And so I think when it's going well, it's just because I'm not bringing too much emotion into it, maybe.
When I catch those moments, they're fleeting.
Yeah.
And they're just little glimpses.
Yeah.
And it usually coincides when I have some sort of a practice for gratitude, a practice of like pausing and being thankful for the things that I have that are great.
Yeah.
Because the way that my brain is wired, and probably yours too, is you're constantly looking for the arrow that's coming at you.
Yeah.
You're constantly looking for the thing that you don't want to overlook that's going to hurt the business or hurt the family.
Yeah.
But reframing that when I'm successful at it, which is not often, because I fight the same things you do.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you catch a glimpse and you recognize, like, I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful to be here.
Yeah.
They're rare.
Yeah.
But when they're there, I try to stop and just note, like, this is one of those moments.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's right. I think that's wise.
So you've been CEOing Pacha now for 11 years.
Yeah.
You're still young. How old are you?
34.
34.
Yeah.
So you're not going to retire anytime soon. But there will come a day when you get off the ride.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
How will you make that decision? When will you know the time's right?
I don't know. I think some of it depends on, is there still value I can add? Like, what's the value I can add? And if there's still value that I can add, then that's great. You know, and it's not just me that decides that. It's my team. It's others around me. People that I put in even position above me that can help me know when that's right.
Yeah.
People on my board. So I think it's just about what value I can add. And if I feel like I've done everything that I can do in that, then I can feel good about it.
If you could still add value 30 years from now, are you still doing this 30 years from now?
Yeah, I can see it. There's a side of me that wants to pursue and do lots of other things. And you and I've had those conversations for years. Like, I've got, I do this, do that. But I've slowly, and maybe it's not a good thing, but maybe I've come to terms with that. I slowly died to sort of my own desires. I've tried to die to them more and more. And how can I be of service? How can I be of use? If I still feel like this is the vehicle to do that, then it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because all of my gratification or my energy, my passion doesn't purely come from my vocation. My vocation is like a calling, a service that I do, but that, you know, I could be content by doing that. I could be content doing other things, but
yeah,
I don't know.
It's like where can I be the most useful? Where can I make the biggest impact?
Yeah. And you got to get energy. I mean, you got to get some energy from it. Like, you can't be a total drain. And a lot of that comes with the people you work with. Like, for me anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it's the people that I work with.
That's been hard for me to recognize the distinction between, I went to a convention today, like an expo.
Okay.
And I hate doing stuff like that.
They're hard.
I hate it. It just sucks my energy away.
Sunday.
I hope you enjoy it. I never have really enjoyed those things, and they're draining to me. Mm-hmm. It's been hard for me to find a separation or to find a set of criteria that help me define, okay, is this a thing that it's draining to me because I'm not supposed to be doing it and I should avoid it, and that that I'm not being a good steward of my time for the business by getting sucked into doing stuff like this? Or am I just being a bitch about it? Right. Because I don't like going to expos. Right. How do you draw the line between those two things?
It's a tough one. Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know, but I know what you're talking about. And I think it's so circumstantial. Yeah. You get to ask that question every time you do it. Like, why am I feeling this way? And if it is truly like, I just don't want to do it, but that you could add value. See, it's almost like you could ask people around you, like, do I add value in this? Like, help me understand the value I add. And if you do, then yeah, maybe you just need to suck it up.
Yeah.
But if there is none, I mean, so I think it does come from keeping good people around you that can help you see it too. You know? I
think so. I think that's the nature of blind spots is you just don't see them.
Right.
So having people like you who I can talk to once a week and know, okay, I've got a conversation with Andrew coming up Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to bounce this off of him. Yeah. Because I know you'll tell me, hey, you're being a bitch about that. Like, suck it up, dude. Yeah, you need to go back to work. Yeah. In fact, we had a conversation tail end of last year that went something along those lines. Yeah, where it was you basically telling me, there's a bird in the hand that if you fail to recognize, a bird in the hand with respect to your business, that you're a steward of this thing now, that you have a responsibility to give this thing your full effort and your full heart. And there's going to be phases where you're not super gratified from the work, but suck it up, buttercup. Like, you still got to go. You still got to make this work.
Because at the end of the day, in your old age, you don't want to look back and have regrets.
That's right. Yeah. I'm not somebody that does regret
I know
well.
you are. That's probably why I said it.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
It'd just be hard. It'd be hard. It'd be hard for any of us, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would be.
And not to say that success is guaranteed, but your effort is what you can control.
Yeah.
You can't fully control the outcome of things, which is hard. I always try to control the outcome. I have in the past. Like, I just want to control the outcome, but then you kind of lose sight of, well, what do I do right now?
Right.
What's the work that needs to be done now?
I think the distinction that you helped me realize, and actually is one of the things I wrote down, is that there's a difference between being happy in your job and finding meaning in your job.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And there's been times when you go through really challenging circumstances, probably a lot like what happened with you and that big supplier or big retailer, where nothing about that creates happiness for you.
No.
It's only a bad thing in the moment.
Right.
But then there's a point at which you get through it and you have the benefit of hindsight and you learned a lesson the hard way that you'll never forget.
Yeah.
And you can find meaning in that where happiness would not have been sufficient anyways.
Totally.
I think happiness is just the wrong metric.
It is. And feeling, I think that I don't know if it's our culture, I don't know if it's our country, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a human nature thing, but we're addicted to the feeling. How did I feel? And I'm not saying the feelings are wrong, because they're very important to pay attention to. But if it's purely feeling, it's kind of like, my wife and I talk about this with marriage. Like, I'm not feeling it. It's like, there's sometimes you don't feel like being nice, or you're not feeling it. But does that mean that you're not in love? What is love? Like, or you could equate that to work too. Yeah, like, I'm not feeling it. Well, guarantee you the professionals that, I was watching some golf videos recently because I've been enjoying learning golf. I'm like, guarantee you that some of those guys they didn't feel like getting up and going golfing that tournament.
Yeah.
Or there's professional athletes that wake up I don't really feel like it. Well, they're still doing the job. Yeah. And it's not purely feelings. It's about getting the job done. And I think that's undervalued and underrated. You take that so far, and then you could get misery too. So there's a balance.
Yeah. I had a mentor that when I started in a sales career that used the analogy of a tractor. He was always talking to me about, be a tractor. You're not going to go too fast. You're not going to go too slow. You're just going to set a pace, and you're going to keep that pace.
Yeah.
And you're going to win deals, and you're going to want to get all high about it. Don't do it.
Right.
Pump the brakes, bring yourself back down, just keep plugging away.
Yeah.
And there's going to be times when you get your ass kicked and you're going to feel like being really down, and you got to pull yourself back up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Setting that sort of tractor's pace that's an analogy I've grabbed a hold of.
I love that. My CFO and Frank Kevin's been a good one for me on that one.
Yes.
He's been that consistent person to help teach me that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't naturally have that.
Is it harder for you to pull yourself up when you have a really bad circumstance, or is it harder for you to pull yourself down when things are going great and you get excited?
The first one. It's hard for me to pull myself up out of bad. Yeah.
Huh.
It's okay for, like, the best thing in the world could happen, and it'd be really easy for me to just be like, all right.
You're good at being stoic and
another day.
Yeah. In the midst of success.
Yeah.
So then how do you celebrate victories?
I don't really.
Why? Is that right? Should you?
Oh yeah, I should probably. Yeah. Oh, I should totally. Like, I should celebrate more. I should have, like, the Bible talks a lot about feasts, like having a feast and celebration that were days long.
Yeah.
And no, I don't do that. I think a little bit of it's culture and heritage, like my heritage on both sides, Czech and Finns, like, they're not super celebratory people. And so I think some of it's just in my blood and then in my family. So there's that. And then it's where I live in Nebraska. I mean, that just is. Kansas, where I'm from, that just is. People don't get too high, too low. It's just pretty steady. So some of it's culture, some of it's family, but I should more.
Yeah.
I should more.
Probably regret there if you wake up and you're an old man and you didn't enjoy any of the ride or celebrate it.
Totally.
But it also requires you to have people around you who can come up and be like, hey man, you got to get back to work.
Right.
stop popping champagne and go back to what you were doing.
Yeah, it's both. I need to do more of the celebration. I think I should just ask my team that, frankly, like what would it look like for us to, because I tell them, frankly, like, do not look to me as the one that will be the one to celebrate this stuff. And so the person that just brought on, like, great at celebrating. Like, that's awesome. If you see me not doing that initially, don't take that as a sign that I don't like it. It's great.
Right.
And maybe I'll learn how to do it too through you.
Right. I saw it when you had your 10-year anniversary as a business.
Oh, yeah.
Because
that was good.
Not many companies make it to 10 years.
Yeah, right.
Not many companies make it to, how many employees do you have now?
Like 70.
70 employees. Yeah. So to not pause every once in a while.
Yeah.
And recognize, like, oh man, look how far we've come.
Right.
I could see you're probably going to get old and regret that.
Oh, you know what's funny about that is, like, we did that in our town. We closed down the street, had a party, had a band. Like, it was a big shindig. I didn't like it, like, personally.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't.
Yeah. It makes you too much the center of attention.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, I even gave a talk on the stage and all these things. Like, I didn't want to do those things, but I did them for everybody else. Yeah. And yeah, I couldn't even enjoy that. I don't know. I think I'm weird in that way.
Yeah.
Probably just more introverted.
How different, this is a little bit of a left turn, but how different is the business today compared to, let's say, the sort of pre-Whole Foods engagement with Pacha? Because y'all do a lot with Whole Foods now.
Yeah.
What was that pivot like?
That wasn't so much of a pivot. I think. I think that as an organization grows, especially ours, we just took a culture survey. I found one that's oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it now, but it was talking about these different culture of a company is used a lot. And I wanted to figure out, how do you better define it, or what are the frameworks to understand culture? So that's not something nebulous. Culture can be equated to what's the vibe, or culture could be like, oh, they give donuts or whatever. I don't view that as culture. And so his competing values framework was the framework I looked up. And it made a ton of sense. There was 4 spectrums, but the ones that were polar opposite of each other that I thought were interesting, that really described our early culture and sort of the culture we're moving to, was a clan culture, which is more, decisions are consensus driven. Everybody has a say. It's more important to be together than to move quickly or to be competitive. And that's how we started out. And I can't tell you exactly why I formed that culture, but it just felt right. And so we were very much that way. Probably slow moving, consensus driven, really making sure everybody is a part of the decision making. And as we've grown, it's gotten more towards the other end of the spectrum, which is about performance and maybe more hierarchical in terms of structure. And I would have thought, that's so bad. That's so dumb. At the end of the day, you should have a little element of all of that. It's not like one is right or one is wrong. You kind of want to, when you look at that framework, you can see elements that are good in all of them. But when we first started, it's more clan focused, just trying to stay together. Now it's putting more structure, more controls, and maybe more measurement focused of results is really important for us to make traction and to improve, because the organization gets more complex and little tweaks can really either cause harm or grow in a positive way. And so that's how we've shifted over the years.
Was it a slow boil, or was there a point where you woke up and realized, like, oh, this is something different than it was yesterday?
Slower, probably. But I think we live in such a competitive world that I think that's the difference is, when you're small, real small, you're not, we're still relatively small, but, when you're just starting out, you're competing, of course, but you're not always aware of the level of competition. But every stage you get up, you're dealing with smarter and smarter and better and more money and more. You're dealing with companies that are more sophisticated. So you have to up your game. And so I think it probably just naturally flows that way for a lot of companies, or at least it did for us and me. But yeah, for me, it wasn't an overnight thing, but it was a realization of, okay, if I care about this mission of the organization, if I care about the organization achieving its mission, then we have to be really tight. We've got to be really good. And it's not enough to just be together. You have to have the right people making the right decisions. Not everybody's going to be a part of those decisions. That's okay. It's the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
And, that was hard for a lot of people, frankly. It's really difficult.
Yeah. It requires, as the company gets bigger, I mean, we're not as big as you are people-wise or even close, but as the company's gotten bigger, I've realized how much my job has changed over the course of time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, CEO of a 5-person company is very different than CEO of a 40-person company.
Right.
Is there a limit to that for you? Like, is there a point at which you think the company would outgrow your skill set? Or is there a point at which the company would require something of you as its CEO that you're not willing to give it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. I think skill set for sure, in terms of, can I do the skills of, the people that I hire? No, I've managed people now for years that I cannot do what they do. So I feel comfortable enough in my ability to manage people who are really awesome at what they do. So I guess I'm saying the opposite. In that way, I think I could keep going.
Yeah.
I have enough of an understanding of basics of how P&L works, how a balance sheet works, how a cash flow statement works, how the mechanics of our, everything from sourcing, manufacturing, sales, market. I understand the concepts and the principles enough that it's hard to be fully fooled or get off super track, as long as I have good people.
Yeah.
But your second question was like, is there something that it would require that I wouldn't? I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. Is there a point the business needs something from a CEO that you're just not willing to give it?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think being more in the public eye would be harder for me.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a private person.
Yeah.
And so that would be tough. I would have to be convinced it was the right thing for the organization.
Right. I think if the company needed its CEO to travel a whole lot,
right,
and it took me away from family a bunch, I think that would cross the line for me too.
Yeah. That's hard.
The family piece of it, the balancing of work and home life. I mean, like we talked about before, it's an impossibility. It's when you are balanced is because you're course correcting constantly and you're just doing this sort of back and forth thing. But you have how many kids?
3.
3 boys, girls?
Boys.
All boys.
All boys.
So talk about that. I'll ask you, let's say 2 more questions. Yeah, we're almost at our hour here. Talk about, I mean, you only have boys, so that's the only context you have.
Yeah.
But talk about the importance you place on the way that you and your bride are raising your boys. Do y'all talk about it a lot?
Oh yeah, every day.
What are the pillars of their character that you're trying to raise them to have?
Great question. I want them to be men that defend other people, that will look out for others. I want them to be learners, to enjoy learning, and to be intelligent, to have the capacity to learn things, to have experiences, to be people of faith, is incredibly important for both of us.
Do you want their life to be easier than the life that you had when you were a kid?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In some ways, yes. For sure, I don't want them to have to go through certain things that I went through. But in other ways, I'm very grateful for some of the hard things that I had. So I do want them to have to struggle in ways, my oldest is 6. So like I've talked about this, but like, when is that time? I don't know.
Yeah.
But there will come a time where they will go through hard things, and hopefully more under my supervision, so that it's fairly controlled, but it's still nonetheless hard.
Controlled hard things, especially at a young age, feels like it will pay dividends later.
Yeah.
I've had this conversation with a couple of people in here about how I think we may be the first generation since the Great Depression era that doesn't necessarily want an easier life for our kids.
Yeah.
Because we recognize some of the things about the people that I love, that I have the most respect for, some of the things about their character, I know those things are there, because they went through some shit.
Yeah, that's right.
And you kind of need that in order to develop that character.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about kettlebell carries, and we did this long, heavy kettlebell carry.
Yeah.
And I realized the metaphor that is for the way that we're living our lives, taking on hard things on purpose and being willing to lean into it.
Oh yeah.
And I've started taking Lincoln, my oldest, with me on hikes.
Yeah.
And we always take weight with us.
Yeah.
You can't walk without weight, because you have to be able to carry more weight than just you. And getting to see his 9-year-old brain kind of figure out, okay, we're going to get up early. We're going to go straight outside. We're going to pick up the weight. We're not going to set it on the ground for the entire, we go on a 5-mile hike up and down hills and through creeks. And there's this moment with him every week when we get back, we do it every Monday, where we get back to the house and you realize this thing clicks in his brain of like, that hard thing that I was dreading doing, I just did it.
Yeah.
And now I'm done with it.
Right.
And it carries him through Monday, Tuesday, sometimes into Wednesday, where he has this kind of confidence to him. And I don't know that you can instill that in your kids by wanting them to have an easier life.
No, not at all.
It doesn't seem to coincide.
No, they need that responsibility, the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to recognize that feeling that you get when you wake up early and, literally or metaphorically, where you lean into something that you know is going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be hard, but you do it anyways. Yeah. There's value in that.
And watch you fail too. Like, I think I just started golfing. I'm horrible, like horrible. But I bring my son with me, and he watches me be horrible. It's funny. He's like, just hit it at an angle, Dad. You're like, hit it at an angle. That's his favorite thing he says. Like, dude, you're not. But I talked to him the whole time we golfed, and I told him, like, yeah, I'm really bad. Like that was really bad. But that one wasn't so bad. That was actually pretty good. And I just said, hey, if you're not good at something, that's okay. You just got to keep trying. And he sees me not getting frustrated at maybe being terrible at this thing, and then he sees me making progress. And
that's cool.
It's just neat because you got to do things that you fail at that are hard. Yeah, and that's okay.
Especially when the consequences are small.
They're so small. Yeah. Like we're just out. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? We're just outside.
Right.
We're just walking around.
Let failures happen when the consequences are small.
Right.
So that they know how to tolerate those failures.
Right.
Okay, so I have one more question.
Yeah.
Your business has you have a business purpose that includes some sort of an altruism or some sort of a greater good.
Yeah.
When those two things conflict with each other, running a profitable, growing, thriving business on paper,
right,
or running a business that is looking out for the greater good.
Yeah.
When those two things are in conflict, how do you weigh decisions differently than somebody who doesn't have that as an element of their business plan?
It's tough, and it's just like it depends on the circumstance. My job with our impact is to try to make those as close as possible. I'll give you for instance. So one of the main ways that we have an impact is the sourcing of our ingredients. When you source ingredients from wild harvested rainforests with communities in rural Africa, and you're helping to provide livelihoods to some of the most remote people that have never participated in a global economy before, those happen to be the best ingredients you can get. It's most pristine, untouched, better ingredients. They make a better product. In our case, they make a better soap. There is not a lose in that scenario. It's only an upside win. And so it's finding I'm not saying that that's always the case, but that's my job in terms of our impact, is to try to make it not conflicting. So if we can do good things for people, for planet, sourcing in a better way, but make a better product at a good cost, because we're going direct to the farm. We're not going through 3 or 4 middlemen. Like that's the ultimate. And so it's trying to find as many of those as possible.
Does it make it harder to make decisions?
Oh, it makes it more complex sometimes. Like maybe it's a longer build. I mean, in the case of West Africa, we work in Liberia. I looked at that project in 2019 with our head of impact and sourcing. So when was that, 5 years ago? I looked at it then. we got our first oil shipment in 2024 this year.
Wow.
And so that took that long to build that supply chain and we just signed a MOU saying, hey, we'll buy oil from you. That allowed them to go to USAID, USADF, these various organizations and attract over $1 million. We helped them do that, but that took so long. So yeah, it's harder to do those things. It's way harder and it takes longer, but if you're willing to stick it out, there are win-wins in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. There are times where it's conflicting. Like, I wish we didn't have to use so much plastic. There's not that much alternative. And when you think about like bottles, we do like aluminum bottles, but even that's not perfect. So there's some trade-offs, right? There's no such thing as perfection, but it's trying to find the things that align the most, like economics, and it's really just value alignment. Like, how do you align value? It's not easy, and that's why I think most people don't do it. Like it's like, hey, I'll go make a lot of money, and then at the end I'll just give it away.
Yeah.
But once I have a lot, then I'll just like
right.
Instead of like, hey, let's try to do this the right way in the process. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And anybody who says they have the golden ticket or like the magic bullet, that's just not right.
Yeah.
But you can catch glimpses of it, like, oh, this is beneficial in so many ways, and that's cool.
Yeah. There's something to it too that shines through in your actual product.
Yeah.
Because our businesses are very different.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I really like about CPG businesses, consumer packaged goods businesses, is that when you work with a company with people that are passionate about the product or the mission of the company, every once in a while you'll find one that whatever that thing is, that cocktail of greater good and great product, shows up in this tangible form.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is you've gifted Ashton and I some soaps to try.
Yeah.
And every time we take a new bar of soap out of the box, there's an excitement around it.
Yeah.
It's like this little artifact of, it's just cool. And every detail on it is very refined and it feels different in your hand.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just my friendship with you that makes it feel that way, or if it's just the actual product.
I don't know either.
I'd like to
think it'd be the product. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I think it is, man.
That'd be cool.
So you're nailing it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Thanks for taking some time to do this. There's so much I would want to talk to you about that I feel like we could do this 10 times and still not get to the bottom of it.
Keep going.
Anytime you come to Austin,
let's do it.
I'd like to bring you back in.
All right, man.
Just not at midnight.
Okay.
Paul might quit. Andrew, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tanner.
Really appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship.
Me too, buddy.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right.